Okay, greetings everyone. We're starting blockchain technology, um, which is a departure from data science and big data analytics. They don't necessarily have anything to do with each other, but since the University of the Cumberlands has um, a blockchain concentration, um, we are we are covering it in the full length semester this summer. Remind me, though, if you would, in your class discussion this week, you have a discussion post that's due this week. If you are in the blockchain specialty or considering changing to it, please let us know that. It seems like during our residency weekend, no one was in the blockchain specialty. So anyway, here we go. First week, this is just overview. If you've never looked into blockchain or Bitcoin, it's fascinating. I'm not an expert. I've never owned Bitcoin. I've never conducted research in blockchain technology or even written about it necessarily at the academic level. So we'll be exploring this topic together. But just reading this week's resources, I'll post my slides because I've added links in several of the speaker notes sections, as well as um, putting a few articles in your resources this week. There is a textbook listed, and it seems like I was able to get to it. Blockchain, Everything You Need to Know from Harvard Business Review is in the syllabus. I can't find it on the library website anymore. So don't worry about it. I'm not going to make you memorize that by any means. It was a resource, but there's so much out there. So much information. Any one text is insignificant. To just get the foundational um, um, principles of what a blockchain is and what it means. And then there are all kinds of people speculating on the different applications of of a blockchain. So anyway, that's this week. So we'll be going over what is a blockchain, or is it a capital B blockchain, or is it two words blockchain, or are they both capitalized? I'm still seeing a, a pretty mixed use. So if you're writing about it, try to standardize on one. I think lowercase blockchain, all one word, like I posed in the question there. What is a blockchain? I think a blockchain is becoming an accepted word, one word. Anyway, and then we'll talk about what is a blockchain versus Bitcoin. Everybody's first dance with blockchain. That's what they kind of came out at the same time. It was the first implementation of this new theoretical um, thing called the blockchain. And they talk about this fictitious group publishing um, a blockchain white paper. I was hunting around for it. If you find the original copy of the blockchain white paper that was released in '08 or '09, whatever it was, attach it to your discussion post for me. I'm sure it's easy to find out there. I just quit looking while I was making this presentation. And then I'll go over the discussion post for this week and we'll conclude. Okay, so what is a blockchain? There's, like I said, there's all kinds of different descriptions out there, but a blockchain is it's a technology. It's an approach to a problem, which is verifying transactions in a distributed, trustable manner, decentralized. It's in the case of Bitcoin, it's an infrastructure to one implementation of a generic blockchain technology. So there are multiple ways to look at it, multiple ways to describe what a blockchain is. But then do some reading on this Satoshi Nakamoto thing, man. It just freaks me out that there's so much people are putting real world wealth into something that isn't even owned. But anyway, there are other blockchains out there, different encryption methodologies, different transaction methodologies. So it's a distributed encrypted ledger, which is just another word for a database of things that happened in a transaction, elements of a transaction, but it's all encrypted in sort of a linked list, so that no transaction in the chain can be modified or defrauded, going all the way back. And that's what you will see is, in the case of Bitcoin, is when a blockchain becomes heavily utilized, the growth rate and computational power required to do all of those database transactions um, becomes kind of prohibitive. So if you're not familiar with database transactions and the need to lock, um, go to YouTube or the web and look for database acid properties, ACID. That's just a long held industry methodology or framework to make sure that database transactions occur with reliability. And then you'll kind of be able to translate that with probably what you've seen in your coursework before, or you may, if you're a database developer, you know all about it. Um, but there's a methodology for, proposing a transaction to the database, waiting for confirmation, and then committing the change, and so that like two people don't try to change the same piece of data at the same time. So there's, locking and confirmation and transaction. And then there's, like connection oriented protocols like TCP/IP. Those are transactions between entities that require a protocol, a handshake. What else is a blockchain? Since it's distributed, there's many copies of the same information. So these are, now that the Bitcoin blockchain is up above a quarter terabyte, and it has to be analyzed basically from start to scratch for every transaction to make sure there's nothing weird going on. It's taken some computing power, but anyway, here's Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? You guys got to realize I'm not a Bitcoin fan. I'm not a cryptocurrency fan. I think it's snake oil. I think it's hype. Um, but people have jumped in and made money and gotten back out safely. Uh, okay, people have done heroin and had a good time and quit doing it and didn't get addicted. There's a lot of things that um, you could do that I just don't see the sense in. But then, I don't see any value in Real Housewives of Atlanta television show, but some people do. I don't see how the Kardashian sisters should be worth what they're worth, but some people do. So it's all about perceived value when you convert anything into a tradable commodity that is seen to have worth and limited supply, um, which is just odd for Bitcoin because it has neither. But anyway, so to me, any new technology that comes out, it's fun to look at the first generation, the first go round of a technology, and then kind of see where it is, 10, 20, 100, 5,000 years later. So I've got I went out to Google and I found a early flying machine. Okay, so to me, Bitcoin is that top image, that top flying machine. But who knows? That was probably 120 years ago, 130 years ago. That was taken around the time of the Wright brothers when they successfully flew. But that's the early clunky implementation. Um, but it showed promise, so people were after it. And then the bottom picture is the United States uh, most recent fighter jet, uh, a stealth fighter called the F-35. Um, so yeah, technologies advance, and when they first come out, um, they're exciting, but they're often not optimal, and it takes some evolution. So it first came out, it first made public. Even the source code for Bitcoin is out there. Nobody, who is Satoshi Nakamoto? There's no patent, there's no central bank saying what Bitcoin is worth. It's purely speculative. So, um, uh, but it's our first implementation. Now, next week we'll be talking about, and the weeks following we'll be talking about other implementations of blockchain, and that's what you're going to see out there in the literature. But who owns Bitcoin? Who sets the price? The exchange even isn't centrally controlled. That's one of its big selling points is it's completely decentralized and unregulated, and um, that gives regulators fits because they can't figure out how to tax it or regulate it, and it can be used unlike regular money, which can be tracked if you're worried about drug cartels or terrorist organizations, using money to buy supplies or pay off politicians or whatever. You can kind of track those transactions and what they're used for, and where the money went and everything, but not with Bitcoin. It's just kind of floating out there until you cash it in, and then once you cash your Bitcoin in, it becomes real money, and then it's trackable. But what explains its value, guys? Why why would anyone trade real money for a piece of data out there on the internet? Because that's all a Bitcoin is. It's a piece of data that doesn't relate to anything. It's not a piece of data that's going to allow you, to make a sale like traditional, business intelligence data, that says, hey, we've got a 93% chance of selling to this guy if we put an ad for pizza in front of him at 5:27 p.m. on a Friday night. He's going to order pizza. That's actionable data that would support a decision like that. But what supports the value of Bitcoin? That's something you can obviously put in your discussion this week. Um, when Bitcoin peaked at what, $20,000 per Bitcoin, um, late last year, what keeps Amazon, say, from well, I'm getting ahead of myself by one bullet. Yeah. What keeps anyone from starting a new blockchain? There are many cryptocurrencies out there. So what makes Bitcoin worth anything? Anybody can instantiate a blockchain that is a cryptocurrency. Um, so yeah, um, in your discussion this week, that would be a great thing for you to weigh in on. What keeps you from starting Bitbuck or Bitcash if it's going to explode? The founders of Bitcoin could have gone, hey, what the heck? We'll keep a few, for ourselves. We'll keep 100. What's 100 times $20,000? Um, they'll never know. So anyway, like I said, I'm cynical about it. I don't jump on the bandwagon on things like this. And when something doesn't show tangible, um, real world depth of analysis and worth, like the internet bubble in the 90s, or the housing bubble in 2006 and 7. Um, it's unsustainable, and anything that's built on a weak foundation like that, to me, is just something to avoid. But that's what we can talk about during this. If you are a big enthusiast with Bitcoin, then let's talk in class discussion. And then Bitcoin mining, that's kind of a misnomer. It's really uh, almost crowdsourcing the processing of Bitcoin transactions, which are getting to be monumentally difficult to do. But in return for mining, I mean, for participating in the distributed processing of Bitcoin transactions, you can earn Bitcoinage in your digital wallet. And apparently, way back, if you jumped on this when it was, only a few months, maybe less than a year old, you could actually, create some bitcoins, and then, you know, 6, 7 years later, they're worth tens of thousands of dollars. So, good on you. And there are people out there. There's stories on the internet, Bitcoin millionaires. So yeah, Bitcoin mining is participating in the distributed processing of Bitcoin transactions and being rewarded. It's built into the infrastructure. It's built into the approach to Bitcoin and that particular implementation of the blockchain. So then I ask you, what keeps Amazon from taking a new data center? Because Amazon will throw up a data center that's the size of a football field frequently. What keeps them from saying, you know what, we're not going to expand Amazon Web Services using this data center. We're going to devote this entire data center to Bitcoin processing. Or what keeps the government of China, which can manufacture goods for next to nothing, including computers, and has computer scientists all over the place. What keeps them from investing in a data center that is used for nothing but data mining, or Bitcoin mining? Um, I don't know that there's anything to prevent that other than a crash in the value of the Bitcoin. If all of a sudden that new Bitcoin that you get for participating in Bitcoin mining is only worth 3 cents instead of $20,000, all of a sudden the investment you made in it isn't worth anything. And there's specialized appliances you can buy for Bitcoin mining, and at some point, if you add up the cost of the device and all the electricity it takes to process it, and the internet connection, and um, maybe it's worth money, maybe it's not. I don't get it, but I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Um, but yeah, other uses of a trusted transaction verifying mechanism like this, where it records the transaction. It doesn't just, encrypt the handshake like a secure socket layer um, in internet technology. It actually records the results of the transaction. If that could be made much more lightweight, um, it might have great applications, and that's what we'll go into for the future of the course. So this week we have a discussion, and it's really lightweight, guys. So there's still a lot of confusion. So discuss the following. Your explanation of blockchain. So describe it to me like you would explain blockchain to a friend of yours who is not in computers at all. Put it in your own words. We've all read the articles. We don't need, it's a distributed ledger, blah, blah, blah. We've all read those, So let's have some fun with this. It's a discussion. It's not an academic paper. Okay. Right. We're all standing around at work talking about blockchain. That's the way you're supposed to be looking at discussions. That's why when you respond with I'd like to add a few points, and then you just, that's why I hate those posts so much. because it's not a discussion. You're just filling the square. Anyway, so let's try and avoid that. So using the second part here is much more applicable to you guys. So a blockchain is data, right? There's information in each block in the chain. Each block represents a transaction, the details of the transaction. So there's data inside of a blockchain, right? So what sort of data science project do you think would be interesting? How might you implement a data science? What sort of questions would you ask that can be answered by the data in a blockchain? Okay, so this is going to require some thought and a little bit more, reading the articles and links and everything that I posted as I did my background research for this week's lecture. Um, what might you do as a data science project? Now, if you find one out there on the shelf, just make sure you cite your source. Okay. You know, if you need to say, I can't think of anything, but this one sounded really cool, share the link, share the resource, and we'll go check it out too. Because I do want to keep this, data science oriented as we move through blockchain. And there are articles about, how blockchain, if you Google how blockchain will turn data science on its head. Like I said, I don't know. If you look at the processing problem of Bitcoin, it that technology is dead ended to me. It's dead ended. The the Bitcoin blockchain is up to, I don't know, a quarter of a terabyte in size. So that has to be analyzed for each and every blockchain transaction or Bitcoin transaction. So to me, anything that grows like that can't somehow be segmented so that, portions of it can be thought of as, stored as truth, and then we can move on, to more recent transactions. There's got to be a way to like archive and do a checksum or something on portions of the blockchain so that you're not having to analyze the entire thing. But anyway, what do you guys think would be interesting? And hit Google Scholar in the library, and if you can't think of something you think would be interesting, please share a reputable source. And that is all the content for this week. Um, so there's lots out there. Don't regurgitate. And if you need to look up what regurgitate means, it's you eat something, you a bird eats something, it doesn't digest it, and it brings it back up. I would like for you to digest what you've read and what you've learned and put some thought into it in the classroom. Okay. And then think about blockchain like a researcher. Don't think about blockchain like a master's degree student. Think about how you would research that phenomenon. Let that underlying philosophy guide you this week. And nobody cares about their dissertation, but I'll keep this bullet on there until we conclude. Haven't had anyone take me up on my proposal, so oh well. I'll keep it up there because I mean it. I'm here to help with your dissertation. Questions, concerns? Make sure and email me, and I will see you in the discussion this week.